Every betrayal leaves an entry. Every lie creates a debt. Tonight, we open another entry from the bitter ledger. I watched 7 members of the board stand as my former boss begged me to save the company he had destroyed, trying to get rid of me. 24 hours earlier, he had called me replaceable. Now, the same man who smiled while security escorted me out couldn't even look me in the eye. The room was silent, except for one question from the chairman. "Ms. Carter, are you willing to help us?" I looked at the stack of documents in front of me, then at the man who had taken everything I had worked 12 years to build. My answer would decide the future of a company worth nearly $2 billion. If you enjoy stories where patience beats arrogance and justice always finds its way, subscribe to the Bitter Ledger and become part of our growing community. Now, let me tell you how it all began. Most people think the loudest person in the room is the most important. They notice the executives giving speeches, the managers taking credit, and the sales team celebrating million-dollar contracts. They don't notice the people who quietly keep everything running behind the scenes. I was one of those people. For 12 years, I worked as the Senior Disaster Recovery Architect at Halcyon Dynamics, one of the fastest-growing cybersecurity companies in the country. My job wasn't glamorous. Most employees couldn't even explain what I actually did. They just knew that whenever something broke, I somehow fixed it before clients noticed. I liked it that way. Recognition never interested me. Stability did. I had started at Halcyon when there were barely 40 employees, squeezed into a rented office above a furniture warehouse. Back then, our founder, Richard Lawson, knew every employee by name. He used to walk around every Friday afternoon, thanking each department personally. When he thanked me for preventing our servers from crashing during our first major client launch, he said something I never forgot. "Nobody applauds the bridge until it starts to collapse." I carried those words with me for years. As the company grew, I designed systems most people would never see. I built emergency recovery procedures, encryption protocols, backup infrastructures, and compliance documentation. Every audit passed because my team spent months preparing for problems that never happened. Success in my department looked like nothing happening at all, and I loved that. Outside work, my life was quiet. My husband, Ethan, taught high school physics, and our daughter, Lily, had just started college. We weren't rich, but we never worried about paying our bills. Every promotion I earned meant another little piece of security for our family. I honestly believed I would retire from Halcyon. Then Richard sold the company. The announcement came during an emergency all-hands meeting. Richard stood on stage, looking older than I'd ever seen him. "I've decided it's time for someone else to lead Halcyon into its next chapter." The room went silent. Standing beside him was a sharply dressed man in an expensive navy suit, whose smile never quite reached his eyes. "This is Victor Harlan." Victor shook hands with the executives, while cameras flashed around him. Everyone applauded. I noticed something no one else seemed to notice. Richard wasn't smiling anymore. Over the next month, everything changed. People who had been with the company for over a decade suddenly found themselves excluded from meetings. Departments were reorganized. Managers were replaced. Budgets disappeared overnight. Victor loved one phrase more than anything: "We need fresh blood." Whenever someone questioned one of his decisions, he'd lean back in his chair and repeat those 3 words as though they answered everything. Fresh blood. Experienced employees started leaving. Others were pushed out. One afternoon, my closest co-worker, Daniel, leaned against my office doorway after everyone else had gone home. Emily, his voice sounded unusually serious. What? You should start backing up your personal files. I frowned. Why? He glanced over both shoulders before lowering his voice. I overheard Victor talking with human resources. A cold feeling settled in my stomach. They're replacing department heads. I laughed nervously. My performance reviews have been perfect for 12 straight years. I know. Our compliance ratings are the highest in company history. I know. Our disaster recovery audit was literally ranked number 1 in the industry last quarter. I know. He looked me directly in the eyes. It doesn't matter. I wanted to believe he was wrong. I told myself, companies changed leadership all the time. People panicked unnecessarily. Results mattered. Surely results still mattered. 3 days later, I was asked to attend a meeting in conference room 7. No agenda, no explanation, just an invitation marked mandatory. When I opened the conference room door, Victor was already seated beside the head of human resources. Neither of them offered me coffee. Neither smiled. And sitting on the polished table in front of them was a thin white envelope with my name on it. Victor slid the envelope toward me as though he were passing the dinner menu instead of ending 12 years of my career. Emily, he said, folding his hands on the table. This isn't personal. It's simply a restructuring. I looked at the envelope but didn't touch it. I wasn't aware my department was underperforming. It isn't. So why am I here? He smiled, the kind of smile that belonged on someone explaining why your insurance claim had been denied. We're modernizing. I turned toward Melissa from Human Resources. She couldn't meet my eyes. I had known Melissa for almost a decade. We'd attended retirement parties together. I'd sent flowers when her mother passed away. Now she stared at a legal pad as if it were the most interesting thing she'd ever seen. Victor continued, "We've decided to move in a different direction." "What direction is that?" "A younger one." For the first time in 12 years, I felt anger creeping into my voice. "I'm 42. We're looking for fresh perspectives. I built every disaster recovery protocol this company uses, and we appreciate your contribution." Contribution, past tense. So who's taking over my department? Victor leaned back confidently. My nephew. For a moment, I thought I had misheard him. I'm sorry? Ryan recently completed his MBA. Bright young man. Excellent leadership potential. I blinked. An MBA? That's right. He has cybersecurity experience? Victor hesitated for barely half a second. He'll learn. I actually laughed. Not because it was funny, because it was unbelievable. My entire department exists to prepare for disasters most people never even imagine. One mistake could cost this company millions, which is why he'll have a talented team beneath him. Beneath him? Victor nodded. The rest of your team will remain, so they'll report to someone who's never designed a recovery architecture. They'll adapt. Never handled a compliance audit. They'll adapt. And has never worked a single day in cybersecurity. His smile vanished. They'll adapt. Silence settled over the room. I finally picked up the envelope. Inside was exactly what I'd expected. 12 weeks severance, continuation of benefits, a confidentiality agreement, a clause preventing me from discussing internal operations, a request that I return all company property immediately. At the very bottom was one sentence that made my stomach tighten. Your employment ends effective immediately. I looked up. I don't even get to finish today? For security reasons, Melissa answered quietly. Security reasons. The irony almost made me smile. I had written the very security policy they were now using against me. Victor stood. I'm sure you'll land on your feet. He extended his hand. I looked at it, then back at him. I hope your nephew learns quickly. He will. I hope so too. He frowned. Something about my calmness seemed to disappoint him. Perhaps he'd expected tears, begging, anger. Instead, I gathered my purse, my phone, and my notebook. As I reached the door, Victor spoke again. Oh, one more thing. I turned. Ryan starts Monday. I'd appreciate it if you'd email him any notes you think might help with the transition. For the first time since entering the room, I smiled. I've always believed people should earn their own experience. Then I walked out. My team was waiting. Daniel, Priya, Marcus, Angela. Every one of them looked up as I stepped into the department. Nobody needed an explanation. They had already seen security walking toward my office. Daniel stood first. No. I nodded once. They're replacing you? Apparently. With who? I hesitated. You'll think I'm joking. Nobody laughed after I told them. Marcus actually whispered, his nephew? Angela shook her head. They're going to destroy this place. I spent the next 20 minutes packing the few personal items I'd accumulated over 12 years. A framed family photo, a ceramic coffee mug Lily had painted when she was 9, a tiny cactus somehow still alive after 7 years, Richard Lawson's handwritten note, nobody applauds the bridge until it starts to collapse. I slipped it into my bag. When security arrived, both guards looked embarrassed. One of them, Carl, had worked there nearly as long as I had. I'm sorry, Emily. I know. He carried one of my boxes. Neither of us spoke during the walk through the office. People stopped typing. Conversations ended. Heads turned. Nobody said anything. They simply watched. Some looked frightened. Others looked angry. Most looked relieved that it wasn't them. The elevator doors opened. Just before I stepped inside, Daniel hurried over. He pressed something into my hand, so discreetly that even security didn't notice. What is this? I whispered. My insurance policy. The elevator doors closed before I could ask another question. Only once I reached my car did I open my hand. It was a flash drive. No label, no explanation. My phone rang before I could examine it. Ethan. Hey, he answered gently. How'd the meeting go? I stared through the windshield for several seconds. I lost my job. Silence. Then, I'm coming home. You don't have to leave school. I'm already walking to the parking lot. His voice never changed, never panicked, never asked whose fault it was. Just 4 words. I'm coming home. I didn't realize how badly I needed to hear them until tears finally escaped. That evening, we sat around the kitchen table while Lily joined us over a video call from college. She looked furious. They fired Mom! For restructuring, I replied. Bull. Ethan, no, he interrupted gently. She's allowed to call it what it is. Lily folded her arms. What are you going to do? I looked at the flash drive lying beside my untouched dinner. I honestly don't know. Later that night, after everyone had gone to bed, curiosity finally got the better of me. I plugged Daniel's flash drive into my laptop. One folder appeared. Its name was just 2 words. Read first. Inside was a single document. It began with one sentence that instantly erased every thought I'd had about simply finding another job. Emily, Victor isn't just replacing people. Someone inside Halcyon has been changing your compliance reports before they're sent to federal auditors. My heartbeat quickened. I kept reading. Every page uncovered another discrepancy. Altered approval logs, forged digital signatures, missing security certifications, documents I had supposedly signed but had never even seen. Then I reached the final page. Attached was a screenshot of an email chain. The sender's name made my blood run cold. It wasn't Victor. It was someone I'd trusted for nearly 12 years. And beneath the email was Daniel's handwritten note. If I'm right, they're planning to blame all of this on you. I stared at the screen for so long that my laptop dimmed itself. My name appeared on dozens of compliance reports that I had never approved. Digital signatures identical to mine had been stamped onto documents that bypassed critical security checks. Whoever had done it hadn't just copied my signature, they had copied my entire approval pattern. That wasn't something an outsider could do. Only someone with years of access to my work would know exactly how I documented audits. I picked up my phone and called Daniel. He answered on the first ring. You read it. I did. You understand why I couldn't send that through company email. Who else knows? No one. And how long have you known? I only pieced it together after they fired you. My heart sank. Daniel, if these reports go to the regulators, they'll say you approved everything. Neither of us spoke. I suddenly understood why Victor had been so eager to end my employment immediately. A former employee couldn't defend systems she no longer had access to. A former employee made the perfect scapegoat. The next morning, instead of calling a lawyer, I called someone I hadn't spoken to since the acquisition. Richard Lawson. I expected voicemail. Instead, he answered himself. Emily. His voice carried the same calm confidence I remembered. I heard what happened. You did? People still call me. For the next hour, I explained everything. The altered reports, the forged signatures, Daniel's evidence. When I finished, Richard was silent. Finally, he asked one question. Did you keep copies of your original audit archives? I almost laughed. Richard, you taught me never to trust a single backup. Good. I have offline archives going back 11 years. I thought you might. His voice hardened. Don't contact Victor. Don't accuse anyone. And don't tell them what you know. What should I do? Let them keep digging. Within 48 hours, Halcyon announced that its annual federal compliance audit had begun. Daniel kept me informed. Ryan had already started making changes he didn't understand. Critical maintenance windows were skipped. Documentation reviews were ignored. Questions from auditors piled up with no one able to answer them. Victor insisted everything was under control. It wasn't. 5 days later, the first major client suspended a contract pending the audit results. 3 days after that, another followed. Then, another. Halcyon's stock dropped nearly 14% in a single afternoon. News outlets blamed market uncertainty. The board blamed management. Management blamed the compliance department. And Victor blamed me. His legal team sent a letter accusing me of negligence and threatening legal action for intentional failures in documentation. I smiled as I finished reading it. Ethan looked confused. Why are you smiling? Because they just made their biggest mistake. How? They've officially claimed I approved documents that I never touched. He frowned. Isn't that dangerous? Very. I reached into my filing cabinet and pulled out a fireproof lockbox. Inside were 12 years of time-stamped archive drives. Every report, every revision, every audit log, every cryptographic verification record. Exactly as Richard had taught me years earlier. People think backups exist to recover lost files. The best backups recover the truth. My attorney filed our response the next morning. Not a denial. Evidence. Complete evidence. Metadata. Original timestamps. Hash verification records. Email histories. Version control logs. Every single alteration could be traced. Within hours, Halcyon's attorneys requested a private meeting. We declined. Instead, we requested that every communication include members of the board. That changed everything. The emergency board meeting was scheduled for the following Tuesday. I walked into the building I had left only 2 weeks earlier. This time, no security escorted me. A receptionist greeted me by name. The boardroom was already full. Victor looked exhausted. Ryan looked terrified. Several outside attorneys were present. Federal compliance investigators sat quietly near the back. The chairman spoke first. Ms. Carter, thank you for coming. I nodded politely. Victor cleared his throat. We're hoping to resolve a misunderstanding. I turned toward him. A misunderstanding? He forced a smile. It appears there may have been discrepancies in our documentation. There were. And perhaps your records can help clarify matters. My records already clarified them. One investigator slid a thick binder onto the table. We compared Ms. Carter's archived files against the company's submitted reports. He opened the binder. There are 138 unauthorized modifications. Another page. 47 forged approvals. Another. 17 falsified compliance certifications. The room fell silent. Then came the sentence that changed everything. None originated from Ms. Carter. Every eye turned toward Victor. His face had lost all color. The investigators continued. The unauthorized edits originated after the acquisition. Another pause. The credentials used belong to an executive administrator operating under direct authorization from the chief executive officer, Victor whispered. That's impossible. It isn't, the investigator replied calmly. The digital evidence is conclusive. Ryan lowered his head into his hands. I didn't know. I believe you, I said quietly. You were never qualified enough to hide something this complicated. Victor stared at me. You planned this. No, I simply kept accurate records. The chairman slowly removed his glasses. I fired the wrong employee. You certainly did. He looked at me with genuine regret. Emily, Would you consider returning as Chief Information Security Officer? Every head in the room turned toward me. 2 weeks earlier, I'd left carrying a cardboard box. Now they were offering me the executive position. I thought about the sleepless nights, the humiliation, walking past co-workers while security escorted me out, Lily's anger, Ethan's quiet support, Richard's advice. Then I shook my head. No. The silence deepened. I've already accepted another position. That wasn't entirely true. I hadn't signed the paperwork yet. But 3 competing cybersecurity firms had reached out after word of the investigation quietly spread through the industry. One of them offered me something Halcyon never had: a seat at the executive table. The chairman looked disappointed. I understand. I stood. Before leaving, I looked at Victor one last time. You once told me everyone was replaceable. He couldn't answer. The funny thing about bridges, I continued, remembering Richard's words, is that nobody notices them until they collapse. Then I walked out. 3 months later, Victor resigned while facing multiple civil investigations. Ryan left the company and eventually admitted publicly that he had accepted a position he wasn't qualified to hold. Several executives were dismissed after internal reviews uncovered a culture of nepotism and concealed compliance failures. Richard never returned to Halcyon, but he called me after my first week at my new company. How's the new office? I smiled. It feels good to be somewhere that values the people holding up the bridge. I knew you'd be fine. You know what surprised me most? What? I thought losing my job was the worst thing that could happen. And it turned out to be the best thing that ever did. Some debts are paid with money. Others are paid with time. But every betrayal leaves its mark, and every mark finds its place in the bitter ledger. If this story kept you guessing until the very end, subscribe to the Bitter Ledger for more unforgettable stories where patience defeats arrogance and justice is earned, not given. Leave a comment telling us what you think Victor's biggest mistake really was. And if you enjoyed this entry, give the video a like and share it with someone who loves stories filled with twists, betrayal, and satisfying justice. Until next time, another entry awaits in the Bitter Ledger.